Darius Cole sat on the park bench watching his son with quiet pride. The boy's determined expression as he moved steadily from bar to bar on the playground equipment reminded him so strongly of his late wife. These peaceful afternoons had become their special ritual, a chance to be simply father and son, free from the weight of the world. The crunch of tires on asphalt cut through his thoughts. His military-trained senses registered the deliberate way the patrol car eased to a stop. The officers inside watched him with predatory eyes. Darius kept his expression neutral, even as his jaw tightened slightly. He had seen that look before, the presumption of guilt before a single word was spoken. Officers Garrett Pike and Riley Quinn stepped out of the vehicle with an air of forced authority. Pike's hand rested casually on his holster as they approached with aggressive posture. Quinn hung slightly back, his face a mask of false professionalism that did not match the coldness in his eyes. "Put your useless hands where I can see them, boy," Pike barked without bothering to greet him. "This park isn't for people like you." Darius remained seated, movement slow and calm. "May I ask why you need to see my identification, officer?" "We received reports of suspicious activity near the playground," Quinn interjected smoothly, though no call had ever come in. "Just doing our due diligence." The implied accusation turned Darius's stomach, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm here with my son. He's right there on the bars." Pike's frown deepened. "Prove he's your son. ID. Don't make me say it again." The sound of sneakers striking wood chips announced Kai's arrival. The boy's eyes were wide as he took in the scene. His earlier playful confidence had vanished. "Dad, what's going on?" "Back up," Quinn snapped, making Kai stumble backward. The boy's lower lip trembled as he tried to understand why these officers were so hostile. A wave of protective anger rose in Darius, but he channeled it with sharp precision. He had faced threats in war zones. He would not let these badges with attitudes rattle him. "Officer, please don't speak to my son that way. He hasn't done anything wrong, and neither have I." "Getting mouthy, are we?" Pike's hand shot out, grabbing Darius's arm and trying to haul him forward. "How about we talk about that attitude at the station?" Darius did not resist, but neither did he yield. He stayed firmly seated while Pike's face flushed with frustration. "Take your hand off me. I have not consented to being touched, and you have not established probable cause for an arrest." "You trying to tell me how to do my job?" Pike's fingers dug deeper. "Looks like resistance to me. What do you think, Quinn?" "Definitely uncooperative," Quinn agreed softly, hand now resting on his own weapon. "Maybe we should call for backup." Darius could read their intentions clearly. They wanted him to react, to give them an excuse. They had not counted on his training, his ability to recognize and diffuse tactical situations. More importantly, they had not counted on him being prepared. With his free hand, Darius calmly reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The movement tensed both officers, but he simply pressed a speed dial number and put the call on speaker. The ringing cut through the tension like a knife. "A firm," authoritative voice answered. "Office of General Crow. Secure line." The effect was immediate. Pike's grip loosened, uncertainty flickering across his face. Quinn's professional mask cracked just enough to show surprise. Darius kept his gaze locked on the officers as he spoke. "Sir, this is Darius Cole. Sorry to interrupt your afternoon, but I have a situation that requires witnesses." He could feel their growing unease as the pieces clicked into place. This was not some ordinary civilian they could intimidate. This was someone with connections, someone who knew exactly how to document and report abuse of power, someone who had likely faced far worse threats than two small-town officers with authority complexes. Kai had edged closer during the exchange, strengthened by his father's calm. Darius wanted nothing more than to pull his son close and shield him from this ugly display of prejudice, but he stayed focused on the officers, knowing any sudden movement could give them the excuse they sought. The park had grown quieter. Other parents were steering their children away from the tense scene. The late-day sun glinted off the officers' badges, making them shine like pure gold. Pure shine with no substance, corrupted by the men who wore them. Darius watched Quinn's mind race, searching for a way to spin the story, to twist the narrative. But with a general's office listening, their usual tactics would not work. Unknowingly, they had chosen a target who knew exactly how to fight back, not with fists or shouting, but with accountability and witnesses. The silence stretched, broken only by the distant sound of children playing and the faint static of the open phone line. The power dynamic had shifted, and everyone knew it. These officers had arrived expecting an easy mark, someone to intimidate and degrade without consequences. Instead, they found themselves under a microscope, their every action being recorded at the federal level. The warm afternoon air felt charged with tension as the moment stretched. Darius remained completely still, his military training evident in his controlled breathing and steady gaze. The phone connection stayed open, capturing every second of the confrontation, ensuring that whatever happened next would not go undocumented. The speaker crackled with static while both officers stood frozen, their earlier bravado evaporating. The voice from the Pentagon carried an unmistakable authority that seemed to push them back a step. "Mr. Cole, are you under duress?" the aide asked dryly. "Yes, sir," Darius answered firmly. "I'm being confronted by two officers in Riverside Park while trying to spend the afternoon with my son. Officers, identify yourselves, badge numbers, now." The order cut the air like a blade. Pike's face had turned an interesting shade of red. He opened and closed his mouth without producing words. Quinn's hand twitched near his weapon, but the movement only made him look nervous rather than threatening. "Officer Garrett Pike, badge 47472. Pike finally managed to stammer. "Officer Riley Quinn, badge 831. Quinn added, trying to maintain his professional facade, even as sweat beaded on his forehead. Darius held the phone steady. "Sir, these officers approached me without cause while I was watching my son on the playground. They demanded identification, grabbed my arm without consent, and spoke aggressively to my child. Officer Pike is currently holding my arm in what I believe is an attempt to provoke a response." Pike's fingers sprang open as if Darius's arm had suddenly grown too hot to touch. He took another step back, looking desperately to Quinn for guidance, but his partner appeared just as lost. "I've already contacted your department supervisor," the aide informed them. "He should be arriving shortly. Neither of you is to leave the scene or approach Mr. Cole or his son any further. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir," they murmured in unison, looking like schoolboys caught vandalizing the principal's car. Kay had drawn close during the exchange, his small hand finding his father's free one. Darius gave it a reassuring squeeze, proud of how his son was handling the situation. The boy's eyes were still wide, but fear had given way to curiosity as he watched these supposedly powerful officers reduced to nervous shifting. The screech of tires announced the supervisor's arrival. Sergeant Leland Croft practically leaped from his vehicle, face grim as he took in the scene. Clearly, he had been briefed on the situation and on exactly who Darius Cole was. "Mr. Cole," Croft addressed him directly, deliberately ignoring his officers for the moment. "I apologize for this incident. Can you tell me exactly what happened?" Darius recounted the events in precise detail, his voice remaining calm and professional throughout. He described the unnecessary stop, the threatening behavior, the attempt at intimidation, all while Pike and Quinn stood watching, unable to deny anything with the Pentagon still listening. "Officer Pike grabbed my arm at that point," Darius said, indicating the red marks still visible on his skin. After giving them no reason for physical contact, they tried to escalate the situation when I asked them to remove their hands. Croft's jaw tightened with every detail. When Darius finished, the sergeant turned on his officers with barely contained fury. "Both of you, hand over your weapons and badges. You're on administrative leave, effective immediately." "But Sergeant," Pike began to protest. "Not another word," Croft cut him off. "Internal Affairs will review this thoroughly. Now wait by your vehicle." As the chastened officers slunk away, Croft turned back to Darius. "Sir, I assure you this will be handled properly. We'll need your statement for the official record, but that can wait until tomorrow if you'd prefer to enjoy what's left of the afternoon with your son." "Thank you, Sergeant," Darius replied. "I'll come to the station in the morning." After a few more minutes of procedural discussion and a final goodbye to the Pentagon aide, Darius finally stood, still holding Kai's hand. The boy had been extraordinarily patient throughout the ordeal, but Darius could feel the questions building. "How about ice cream?" he suggested, drawing a radiant smile from his son. "I think we've both earned a treat after all this." At the ice cream shop, a few blocks away, they sat at a small table by the window. Kai attacked a double scoop of mint chocolate chip, while Darius enjoyed a simple vanilla cone. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the street. "Dad," Kai asked between bites, "why were those officers so mean? We weren't doing anything wrong. Darius thought carefully about his answer. Sometimes, son, people think having authority means they can treat others poorly, but they learn the hard way that you can't intimidate everyone. There are always consequences for treating people badly. Like when you called the general. Kai's eyes lit with understanding. Exactly. Darius nodded. It's important to stand up to bullies, but you have to be smart about it. Staying calm and prepared is usually better than getting angry or scared. You weren't scared at all, Kai said with admiration. I was worried about you, Darius admitted, but I knew we'd be all right because we hadn't done anything wrong, and I had a plan to handle it. They finished their ice cream as dusk settled over the city. Streetlights flickered on one by one. As they left the shop, Darius noticed a police truck idling across the street, its headlights pointed directly at them. The next morning dawned cool and clear, but Darius's trained eye immediately caught the dark silhouette of a patrol car lurking halfway down his block. He stepped onto his porch with a trash bag in hand, keeping his usual routine despite the unwanted audience. The vehicle's tinted windows hid its occupants, but Darius could feel the stairs tracking every movement. He walked to the curb at a measured pace, placed the bag in the bin, and mentally noted the truck's license plate. His military intelligence training kicked in automatically. Observe, record, analyze patterns. Inside, Kai finished breakfast, scraping the last bits of cereal with one hand while trying to shove math homework into his backpack with the other. Ready for school, buddy? Darius asked in a soft, casual voice. Almost, Kai answered, finally managing to zip the overloaded backpack. The drive to school passed without incident, but Darius noticed another patrol car join their route 2 turns after leaving the house. He took a few extra turns, confirming the tale. At the school entrance, his jaw tightened when he saw 2 uniformed officers near the main doors, apparently chatting casually with parents and children. Their body language shifted subtly the moment his car stopped. Dad, Kai's voice held a note of anxiety. Those are more police. Don't worry, Darius assured him, squeezing his son's shoulder. Just stay close to me. They were barely halfway up the walk when the officers intercepted them, wearing friendly smiles that never reached their eyes. Good morning, the taller one called with exaggerated cheer. We're conducting a student safety assessment. Would you mind if we asked your son a few questions? Darius felt Kai press against him. I mind a great deal, he answered serenely. My son is a minor, and you have no authority to question him without my presence or consent. Sir, it's just routine, the second officer began. No, it isn't, Darius interrupted, voice firm but controlled. You're here because of yesterday's incident, and this is a clear attempt at intimidation. I suggest you both remember that harassing a child is a serious offense. He guided Kai toward the entrance, placing himself between his son and the officers. Come on, buddy, let's get you to class. Inside the school, Darius walked Kai all the way to his classroom, something he did not usually do. He knelt to eye level outside the door. Remember what we talked about yesterday? He asked quietly. Kai nodded. Stay calm and be smart. That's right. If anyone tries to talk to you about yesterday, or if any police approach you, tell your teacher right away. Okay? Okay, Dad. Kai hugged him tightly before disappearing into the classroom. Meanwhile, across the city at the station, Lieutenant Vance Harlan's face had turned an alarming shade of purple as he paced behind his desk. Officers Pike and Quinn sat in front of him like punished schoolboys. A complaint from the Pentagon. Harlan's voice was dangerously low. You 2 geniuses managed to drag the Pentagon into a simple stop. Sir, we didn't know who he was, Pike protested weakly. Exactly, Harlan exploded, slamming his hand on the desk. You didn't know, so you acted like thugs. And now we've got the top brass from Washington breathing down our necks. He leaned forward, both hands on the desk. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? How it makes this department look? Quinn tried to sound reasonable. We can explain it as a misunderstanding. Shut up, Harlan snapped. You've talked enough. Now we have to remind this man where he lives. He doesn't get to embarrass this department and walk away thinking he's won. Back in his home office, Darius was already implementing countermeasures. He opened a fresh notebook and recorded the morning's events in precise detail. Locations, plate numbers, vehicle descriptions. He had learned in the military that documentation was often the best weapon against systematic harassment. His phone vibrated with a message from a neighbor. Police cars had been parked nearby for hours. Darius added the information to his notes, then called his attorney to brief her on the situation. She agreed to seek an emergency restraining order if the harassment continued. Throughout the day, Darius saw patrol cars everywhere. Outside his office, near the cafe where he grabbed lunch, circling the block while he ran errands. He documented every incident, building a clear pattern of surveillance and intimidation. When he picked Kai up from school, the morning's officers were gone, but another patrol sat across the street. Darius made sure to walk his son to the car in full view of the officers, letting them see his phone recording their presence. That night, after Kai settled into bed with his comics, Darius sat at the kitchen table reviewing his notes. 18 separate instances of police presence. 4 different vehicles. At least 6 distinct officers involved. The pattern was clear. This was organized harassment, not random patrols. His phone rang, showing a blocked number. Darius answered, but said nothing. "We're not done with you." The voice was low, distorted, almost mechanical. The line went dead before he could respond. He added the call to his notes, including the exact duration. Whatever game they were playing, Darius understood one thing clearly. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The following morning, Darius settled into the dining room chair with his laptop humming as he logged into his work system. Familiar sounds of Kai getting ready for school drifted from upstairs. Drawers opening and closing, socks sliding across hardwood, the occasional thump of a dropped shoe. "Dad, have you seen my blue folder?" Kai called. "Check the coffee table, buddy. You were doing homework there last night." Darius answered, fingers moving steadily across the keyboard as he reviewed overnight security reports. Morning light filtered through the front windows, casting long shadows across his orderly workspace. To his right sat a notepad filled with neat entries documenting every police encounter of the past 2 days. His coffee had just reached the perfect temperature when 3 hard knocks shook the front door. Darius instinctively reached for his phone and opened the video recording app as he approached. He already knew what he would find on the other side. Through the peephole, he saw 2 uniformed officers, different faces from the day before, same predatory attitude. "Who is it?" he called, though he already knew. "Police, sir. We need to speak with you." Darius opened the door, but left the security chain in place. "How can I help you, officers?" The taller one, badge-reading Morrison, stepped forward. "We received a report of a loud argument coming from this address. Neighbors are concerned." "There has been no argument here," Darius stated firmly. "As you can hear, it's just my son getting ready for school." He held up his phone, recording clearly. "Badge numbers, please." The second officer, Wheeler, shifted his weight aggressively. "Sir, we need to enter the premises to ensure everyone's safety." "No, that isn't necessary," Darius replied calmly. "You have no probable cause, no warrant, and no consent. I'm recording this interaction and can clearly see your badge numbers. Would you like to explain why you're making false claims about an altercation that never occurred?" Kai appeared at the top of the stairs, blue folder clutched in his hands. "Dad?" "Everything's fine, buddy. Just getting ready for school," Darius answered without taking his eyes off the officers. Morrison's jaw tightened. "Sir, if you continue to be uncooperative—" "I am cooperating fully," Darius interrupted. "I've acknowledged your presence, answered your claims, and explained why they're false. Now, unless you have a warrant, we're finished. I'll be adding this incident to my documentation of harassment." The officers exchanged glances before Morrison spoke again. "We'll note your lack of cooperation in our report." "I'm sure you will," Darius answered, "just as I'm noting this entire interaction in mine." He closed the door firmly, listening to their retreating footsteps. Kai came down the stairs, backpack already ready. "Did they come because of the park?" Darius hugged his son quickly. "Yes, but stay calm. They're just trying to rattle us. Remember what I taught you?" "Stay calm and be smart," Kai recited, offering a small smile. After dropping Kai at school, Darius returned to work, but an email from Human Resources interrupted his focus. The subject line twisted his stomach. Urgent and confidential. He opened it to find a carefully worded message explaining that the department had received an anonymous complaint expressing concern about his emotional stability and suggesting he might pose a workplace safety risk. The email requested he schedule a meeting with HR to address these concerns. Darius's response was immediate and thorough. He attached detailed documentation of the police harassment, including timestamps, plate numbers, and video recordings. He explained the situation clearly, highlighting the pattern of intimidation that had emerged since the park incident. His military background and security clearance spoke to his stability, and he noted that anonymous complaints coinciding with documented police harassment should be viewed with extreme skepticism. The workday passed in a blur of reports and virtual meetings, but Darius kept replaying the morning confrontation. When he picked Kai up from school at the usual time, another patrol car sat across the street. "How was your day?" he asked as Kai climbed into the back seat. His son was quieter than usual. "Mrs. Peterson asked me to stay after class. She wanted to know if everything was okay at home." Darius's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What did you tell her?" "I said everything was fine, but she kept asking weird questions, like if I ever felt scared at home or if there was a lot of yelling." Kai's voice trembled slightly. "Dad, is someone telling bad things about us?" Darius took a deep breath, working to contain his anger. "There are people trying to cause us problems, buddy. But we're going to handle it smart, okay? Like always." That night, after Kai fell asleep, Darius unpacked the security cameras he had ordered with rush shipping. He worked methodically, installing units to cover every approach to the house. One above the front door, angled to capture faces clearly. Another covering the driveway and street, perfectly positioned to record license plates. 2 more at the rear of the house, eliminating any blind spots. Inside, he placed cameras in the main living areas and hallways, not for surveillance, but for protection, proof against any possible false reports. Every camera connected to a secure cloud server with automatic hourly backups. Darius knew the patterns of harassment from his military days. He had seen how escalation worked, but this time he was prepared. Every move would be documented, every false claim recorded, every face and plate captured in high definition. He woke before dawn, military habits still deeply rooted after years of civilian life. The house was silent, except for Kai's soft breathing from upstairs. He went to his laptop where the security feeds displayed in a grid. Something made him review the overnight recordings. He sipped his coffee, methodically checking each camera's footage. A patrol car appeared in the street view. The vehicle moved slowly with lights off, slipping past his house like a predator. Darius leaned closer and adjusted the playback speed. The car circled the block and reappeared for a second pass. "Got you," he murmured, capturing still frames that clearly showed the vehicle's license plate. He added the details to his growing logbook, noting the direction of travel and the fact that the car's spotlight had illuminated his front windows on both passes. After taking Kai to school, Darius sat at the dining table that had become his operations center. His laptop displayed multiple windows, police department records, public databases, civil court filings, and news archives. Years of military intelligence work had taught him to spot patterns, and something about this harassment felt organized and practiced. He began with complaint records against the department. The public database was sparse, but his Pentagon contacts had provided deeper access. Names began repeating: Pike, Quinn, Morrison. More importantly, their supervisor, Lieutenant Vance Harlan, appeared constantly. Darius created a spreadsheet tracking dates, locations, and types of incidents. "Same playbook," he murmured, highlighting another complaint that mirrored his own experience. Anonymous calls about disturbances, sudden welfare checks, mounting pressure until families moved or withdrew their complaints. One reference in a report caught his attention: situation resolved through Division 9 intervention. He found the same phrase in 3 more cases, all involving officers who had faced serious complaints. Each time, the problems mysteriously disappeared along with the complainants. Darius opened a new document and typed quickly: Division 9, no official listing in department structure. His printer hummed as he gathered key documents. With different colored highlighters, he marked names, dates, and patterns: yellow for officer names, green for locations, red for Division 9 references. The pattern grew clearer with every page. He pulled out a fresh manila folder, labeled it Operation Clean House, and began organizing the document's military style. Executive summary on top, supporting evidence categorized and labeled, timeline of events clearly marked. His phone vibrated. A Pentagon contact had sent sealed records of civil lawsuits against the department. 3 of them had been quietly settled with strict confidentiality agreements. They're running a uniform protection racket, he said to himself, adding the new information to his files. The more he researched, the more connections he found. Division 9 wasn't just covering up misconduct, they were systematically eliminating threats to corrupt officers. When Kai came home from school, Darius cleared the table and locked the confidential documents in his office. He wanted dinner to feel normal and safe. They ate spaghetti, Kai's favorite, while talking about his math test and upcoming science project. "Dad?" Kai pushed meatballs around his plate. Tommy asked why there are always police cars near our house now. Darius set down his fork. "Remember we talked about how some people are bullies, even grown-ups?" Kai nodded. "Like the officers at the park." "Right, and what do bullies want?" "To scare you, to make you run away." "Exactly." Darius reached across the table and squeezed his son's hand. "But we're not running. This is our home. We belong here. And if they don't stop—" "They will," Darius assured him, "because I'm gathering evidence like a detective. And when I have enough, they'll have to stop. Not just for us, but for everyone they've been harassing." Kai seemed to consider this. "Like when you taught me to stand up to Derek when he was picking on smaller kids at recess." "A lot like that." Darius smiled. "Sometimes standing up to bullies helps protect other people too." After dinner and homework, Darius tucked Kai in, making sure his nightlight was on and his favorite stuffed tiger was within reach. He read an extra chapter of the book they were working through, wanting to prolong that moment of peace and normalcy. Back downstairs, Darius spread his documents across the dining table again. The pattern was undeniable now. Names, dates, incidents, all pointing to systematic abuse of power. His military training helped him see the structure beneath the chaos. Division 9 wasn't an isolated unit. It was a deliberate tool for maintaining corruption. Looking at the evidence before him, the complaints, the settlements, the familiar patterns of harassment, Darius whispered to himself, "This isn't just about us anymore." Early the next morning, Darius sat at the dining table while his coffee steamed and he accessed secure databases through his military contacts. Dawn had not yet broken, but his mind was sharp, focused on exposing the Division 9 corruption network. "Let's see what you've been hiding," he murmured, opening files spanning recent years. Every summary revealed familiar elements, excessive force complaints that vanished, officers cleared despite strong evidence, witnesses who suddenly went silent. He created a detailed spreadsheet, color-coding incidents by type, red for violence, blue for harassment, yellow for intimidation. Division 9 officer names appeared repeatedly. Darius noted that Officer Morrison was linked to 6 cases in which body camera footage had mysteriously corrupted. 4 internal affairs investigations closed within days, marked insufficient evidence. "Same tactics, different victims," he said while reviewing another complaint. A young mother had reported harassment after filing excessive force charges. Her case disappeared when she suddenly moved out of state without leaving a forwarding address. Darius reviewed his own surveillance footage, adding timestamps and notes. He documented every patrol, every random stop, every suspicious call to his workplace or Kai's school. The pattern was clear, systematic intimidation designed to wear targets down until they collapsed. Across the city at the station, Lieutenant Harlan paced his office, face flushed with anger. "He's not going to quit," he growled at the officers and Morrison. "Time to show him what happens to people who don't know their place." "Sir, he's documenting everything," Morrison warned. "Maybe we should—" "I don't care what he documents." Harlan slammed his hand on the desk. "Nothing official. No reports. No logged calls. Just make his life impossible until he breaks or runs." Back at home, Darius reviewed his security footage while adding notes to his report. 3 distinct patrols had circled his block overnight. He had begun recognizing their patterns, the way they staggered their timing, how they used side streets to maintain surveillance without being obvious. Drawing on his military intelligence experience, he could identify their observation points and how they coordinated movements. They were treating him like a target, but they didn't know he had run similar operations in combat zones. Darius grabbed his keys and headed out for groceries, taking a different route than usual while watching the mirrors. 2 blocks later, a dark truck pulled in behind him. He turned left instead of right at the next intersection, confirming the tale. The vehicle stayed 3 cars back, exactly as he had been taught during surveillance operations. At the store, he spotted a patrol car parked across the street. an officer pretending to look at his phone. Darius discreetly photographed the vehicle's plate while loading groceries. On the way home, he took a winding route, counting 3 different vehicles swapping surveillance duties. "They're burning resources to track one man," he said to himself, adding the details to his log. "They're getting sloppy because they're angry." Throughout the day, Darius cross-referenced more files with his own experiences. He found a family who had filed brutality charges the previous year. Their children had been repeatedly stopped and questioned on the way to school. Another victim reported constant patrol presence outside her workplace until she withdrew the complaint. His phone vibrated. His employer had received another anonymous tip questioning his mental state. Darius added it to his documentation, noting that the timing matched previous harassment patterns. He had already informed his boss about the situation, providing evidence of the orchestrated campaign against him. As afternoon light stretched long shadows, Darius compiled everything into a comprehensive digital report. It included surveillance photos, time logs, pattern analysis, and connections to prior cases. His military training showed in the precise organization. Executive summary first, supporting evidence clearly referenced, escalation timeline highlighted. The pieces fit together like a puzzle, revealing a corrupt system designed to protect itself at all costs. He added his own harassment documentation, photos of patrols, records of suspicious calls, school incident reports, workplace complaints. Presented chronologically, the pattern was undeniable. At dusk, Darius reviewed the report one final time. It was thorough and professional, letting the evidence tell the story. This was no longer about 2 officers. It was about a corrupt system that had operated unchecked for years. He opened his secure email and addressed it to General Crow. The report was encrypted and compressed, ready for transmission. In the message field, he wrote simply, "The problem appears systemic, not limited to 2 officers." His finger hovered over the send button for a moment before pressing it. The message disappeared into the encrypted network, carrying with it evidence of years of unchecked corruption. Morning light poured through the living room windows while Kai sprawled on the carpet watching his favorite cartoon. Animated voices filled the room as Darius reviewed his documentation at the dining table, making sure everything was properly organized. His phone vibrated. The caller ID showed a Pentagon number. "Mr. Cole," a crisp female voice said, "this is Sarah Mitchell from the Department of Defense Liaison Office. I'm following up on the materials you sent General Crow." Darius stepped into the kitchen, keeping Kai in view while speaking quietly. "Yes, thank you for getting back to me." "Your report was thorough," Mitchell said, choosing her words carefully. "The general tasked our legal team with reviewing it immediately. Given the scope of the evidence and the pattern you've identified, we've referred everything to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, specifically their police oversight unit." Darius leaned against the counter, shoulders relaxing slightly. "How long will the review take?" "They're prioritizing it," Mitchell answered. "The combination of your military intelligence background and the quality of the documentation made a strong impression. They're particularly interested in this Division 9 unit you identified." "Any timeline for next steps?" Darius asked, watching Kai laugh at something on the television. "They're moving quickly. The Department of Justice has already contacted municipal authorities." She paused. "Mr. Cole, I want you to know the general is taking this personally. He doesn't like his people being harassed, especially when they're protecting their children." "I appreciate that," Darius said quietly. "Keep monitoring and documenting everything," Mitchell advised. "The Department of Justice may need your testimony later, and Mr. Cole, take care of yourself." Darius ended the call, processing the information. The machinery of justice was finally moving, but he knew from experience that cornered opponents were often the most dangerous. Throughout the morning, he maintained his routine while checking local media. Around midday, his phone began vibrating with news alerts. The city had called an emergency press conference. He turned on the television just as the mayor stepped to the podium looking uncomfortable. Following receipt of credible evidence of serious misconduct, the mayor announced, "The following personnel changes are effective immediately. Officers Garrett Pike and Riley Quinn are suspended pending full investigation. Lieutenant Vance Harlan has been temporarily relieved of field command duties, while Internal Affairs conducts a comprehensive review of Division 9 operations." Darius watched the mayor field questions, noting how carefully he avoided details about the investigation's scope. Still, it was more than he had expected so quickly. The system could work when enough pressure was applied from the right direction. Kai wandered into the kitchen. "Dad, are you okay?" Darius smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "I'm good, buddy. In fact, I think we should celebrate tonight. How about pizza at Tony's?" Kai's face lit up. "Really? Can I get the Supreme with extra cheese?" "You got it, champ." Darius grabbed his keys. "Let's head out early. Beat the dinner rush." At the restaurant, they settled into their usual table by the window. The familiar scent of garlic and tomato sauce filled the air when their pizza arrived. Cheese stretched in long strings as they served the slices. "Remember what I told you about standing up to bullies?" Darius asked while watching Kai attack his slice. "Yeah," Kai said between bites. "Don't let them win, but be smart about it." "That's right. And sometimes if you tell the truth and get help from the right people, things can change." Darius smiled. "Those officers who were bothering us are in trouble because we didn't back down. We documented everything and reported it the right way." Kai considered this, taking another bite. "So they can't bother us anymore?" "Well, we still have to be careful," Darius said honestly, "but we showed them we're not afraid. That's what matters." For the first time in weeks, Kai laughed naturally while telling Darius about his day at school. Darius savored the moment, watching his son gesture animatedly as he described a science experiment. It felt like before all of this began, just a father and son enjoying dinner together. They lingered over the meal, sharing a cannoli for dessert. The sky had darkened by the time they headed home. Streetlights cast pools of yellow light on the pavement. As they approached the police station, Darius noticed something odd. Normally, only 2 or 3 patrol cars were parked outside at that hour. Tonight he counted 6 vehicles clustered near the entrance. Officers stood in tight groups. As they passed slowly, one officer turned to watch their car with a grim, angry expression. Darius recognized him. Officer Morrison, one of Harlan's trusted Division 9 members. The man's face contorted with barely contained rage as he tracked their movement. Darius kept a steady speed, not reacting, but noting every detail. The number of officers present, their positioning, the tension in their body language. Kai was focused on his phone, oblivious to the police presence. Darius maintained calm while processing what he had seen. The unusual concentration of patrols, the officers' somber expressions, Morrison's open hostility, all painted a concerning picture. He drove home deliberately, taking a route that avoided passing the station again. In the passenger seat, Kai hummed along with the radio, still enjoying the afterglow of their celebration dinner. Darius settled into his living room armchair, surrounded by meticulously organized files. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioner and Kai's gentle breathing from down the hall. He had just finished his 3rd security check of the night, testing locks, confirming camera feeds, verifying that motion sensors were active. The digital clock on his phone showed late evening. His laptop screen cast a blue glow over the coffee table where he had arranged key documents. Years of military intelligence work had taught him to trust his instincts, and tonight they were screaming for him to stay alert. He opened the exterior camera feeds on his phone, reviewing views of the front yard, side doors, and backyard. Everything appeared normal, but the street seemed too quiet. No cars had passed in over an hour, unusual even for their residential neighborhood. Darius checked Kai's door once more, opening it just enough to see his son sleeping peacefully, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur, looking far too innocent to be caught in the middle of all this. Back in the living room, he organized another set of documents detailing Division 9's pattern of nighttime raids. He had uncovered multiple cases where they struck without warning, always claiming to have warrants that never appeared in court records. When the house suddenly plunged into darkness, the abrupt silence of electronics powering down felt deafening. Darius's muscles tensed as his combat training took over. This was no accidental blackout. He could hear the electrical hum from houses across the street. Heavy footsteps crunched on the porch, multiple boots trying to move stealthily but betraying their presence to his trained ear. Darius was already moving, crouching low when the first impact of a battering ram shook the front door. Crack. Wood splintered as the doorframe gave way. Flashlight beams stabbed through the darkness, illuminating their furniture. Several figures in tactical gear stormed the entryway. "Police, search warrant!" a voice shouted. But Darius saw no papers, no official announcement, only masked officers charging in with weapons raised. He moved silently down the hallway to Kai's room, bare feet quiet on the carpet. His son sat up in bed, eyes wide with fear. "Shh," Darius whispered, lifting him. "Stay completely still, buddy, just like our safety drills." Kai nodded, clinging to his father as Darius pulled his phone from his pocket. With practiced fingers, he activated audio recording, capturing the sounds of destruction from the front of the house. "Find that bastard," a voice shouted. "Tear this place apart." "You can't hide from us, Cole," another yelled. "You should have kept your mouth shut." Darius recognized Morrison's voice despite the attempt to disguise it. He guided Kai through the darkness, using his perfect mental map of the house layout. They moved crouched, avoiding windows where their silhouettes might be seen from outside. Sounds of systematic destruction followed them. Furniture overturned, drawers dumped, glass breaking. Darius clenched his jaw hearing his laptop smashed, but kept moving. Lives mattered more than evidence right now. They reached the back door just as flashlight beams began lighting the hallway. Darius opened it carefully, grateful he had oiled the hinges the day before. Cool night air hit their faces as they slipped out. Kai trembled but remained silent, face buried in his father's shoulder. Darius moved quickly through the shadows of their backyard, using the hedge for cover. He could hear radio chatter from the front yard, at least 6 officers, maybe more. "Check the rear," someone shouted from inside. "Rodriguez, cover the alley." Darius changed direction immediately. Cutting across a neighbor's yard, he angled away from the alley, using houses and trees for cover. His bare feet found every branch and stone, but he ignored the discomfort, focusing only on getting Kai to safety. They crossed 3 more yards, Darius pausing between each to listen for pursuit. His phone continued recording, capturing both the distant sounds of the assault and his own controlled breathing as they advanced through the darkness. Kai had not made a sound, but Darius could feel his son's heart pounding. He whispered barely audible words of comfort as they moved between houses. "You're doing great, buddy. Almost there. Stay brave for me." The house belonging to his late wife's sister was just ahead. A simple one-story with a well-tended garden. Light glowed behind the living room curtains. Darius had chosen this escape route knowing she always stayed up late watching medical dramas. They crossed the front yard quickly, exposed for only seconds. He could still hear the chaos from their house 2 blocks away. He rapped urgently on Nora's door, aware that every second outside increased the risk. "Please be home," he whispered, holding Kai while they waited in the shadow of her porch. "Please wake up." Nora yanked the door open, eyes widening at the sight of Darius and Kai huddled on her porch. "Oh my God," she whispered, ushering them inside quickly. "Get in, both of you." She locked the door and pulled the curtains. Darius's bare feet left light dirt smudges on her beige carpet, but she didn't seem to notice. Her attention was on Kai, who still hadn't lifted his head from his father's shoulder. "Sit, sit," she insisted, disappearing briefly into her bedroom. She returned with 2 thick blankets, wrapping one around Kai's shoulders as Darius finally settled him on the couch. The second blanket went around Darius, still in the t-shirt and sweatpants he had worn earlier. "They raided the house," Darius explained quietly, holding his son. "No warning, no warrant. First they cut the power, then they kicked the door in." His voice stayed steady, but Nora could see the tension in his jaw, the controlled anger in his eyes. "The police did this?" she asked, sitting across from them. Her medical training kicked in as she noticed Kai's shallow breathing. "Kai, sweetheart, try to take deep breaths for me, okay?" The boy nodded, finally lifting his head. His eyes were still wide, still processing what had happened that night. Nora went to the kitchen and returned with a glass of water and some cookies. "Here, something sweet might help with the shock." Darius pulled out his phone, stopping the recording he had been making since the raid began. "I've got some of it documented, but my laptop is probably destroyed by now. They were tearing the place apart when we left." "Those bastards," Nora muttered, then quickly apologized for swearing in front of Kai. She had been their support since Darius's wife, her sister, had passed years earlier. "You're both staying here tonight. No arguments." The hours passed slowly. Nora made hot chocolate and put cartoons on low volume, trying to create some sense of normalcy. Eventually, Kai's eyes grew heavy. The adrenaline crash hit hard. Nora settled him in her guest room, tucking him in with extra care. "He's finally asleep," she reported when she returned to find Darius still rigid on the couch, staring at his phone. "You should rest too." "I have to go back at first light," Darius answered. "Document everything before they try to cover it up." Darius, Nora began, voice worried. I know, he interrupted gently, but I have to do this right. They're not going to stop just because of this. When dawn finally came, Darius stood at Nora's front door, now wearing borrowed shoes and a jacket she had insisted he take. Keep him close, he told her. No one but me picks him up, no matter what they say. I've got him, she promised. Be careful. Darius approached his house cautiously, photographing the exterior first. Cut power lines, boot prints in his flower beds, the splintered doorframe. Some neighbors were already awake, pretending not to watch from behind curtains. An elderly man, Mr. Chen from next door, approached carefully. They came in unmarked cars, Mr. Chen said quietly, looking around nervously. Black trucks with no lights. I counted 8 men, maybe more. They were here almost 2 hours. Did you see any warrant? Darius asked, recording the conversation on his phone. No papers, just masks and guns. Mr. Chen shook his head. This isn't right, Mr. Cole. Thank you for telling me, Darius said sincerely. You should go inside now, safer that way. Inside, Darius confronted the destruction. Every drawer had been emptied. Sofa cushions were ripped open. Photos torn from walls. They had even pulled up sections of carpet, presumably searching for hidden compartments. His laptop lay in pieces on the dining table. He moved methodically through each room, filming everything. The destruction worsened toward the back of the house. Holes in walls, furniture overturned, even his bed frame broken in half. Kai's room had been ransacked too. Toys were scattered and broken. His dinosaur collection had been swept from the shelves onto the floor. Darius retrieved his encrypted hard drives from their hidden locations, behind a vent, inside a hollow curtain rod, under a loose floorboard in the closet. His military training had taught him always to have contingencies. He found his emergency go bag intact in the attic crawlspace, cash, documents, emergency supplies. After 2 hours of meticulous documentation, he drove to a secure storage unit 20 minutes away, registered under another name. He uploaded all the new evidence to encrypted cloud storage and left physical copies in a locked container. Back at the house, Darius stood amid the rubble of his living room. Glass crunched under his borrowed shoes as he surveyed the damage. Family photos lay scattered across the floor, frames broken. He picked up one showing Kai's last birthday party and carefully removed the shattered glass. The house now felt foreign, violated, unsafe. He could not bring Kai back. Not yet. Nora's house would have to serve a while longer. At least there his son could sleep without fearing another midnight invasion. Standing in the chaos they had left behind, Darius spoke into the empty room, voice firm and resolved. You came into my house, now I'm coming for your careers. Early Monday morning, Darius sat in what remained of his home office, surrounded by the aftermath of the raid. His work laptop was destroyed, but he had managed to salvage a spare tablet. Taking a deep breath, he dialed his boss's number. Good morning, this is Darius Cole, he began firmly. I need to speak with Human Resources about an urgent situation. After several transfers, Jessica Chen, head of HR, came on the line. Darius, we've received some concerning reports. I'm sure you have, he answered carefully. That's why I'm calling. Last night, police raided my home without a warrant. They destroyed my belongings, including my work equipment. There was a long pause. I see, Jessica said slowly. And you're certain they were actual police? I have video evidence, photographs, and witness statements, Darius explained. This is part of an ongoing pattern of harassment that began after I reported 2 officers for racial discrimination. Jessica shuffled papers. Darius, given the sensitive nature of our government contracts and the liability concerns this raises, we're going to have to place you on administrative leave. I assume that's unpaid, Darius said, already knowing the answer from her tone. Unfortunately, it will be unpaid until the situation stabilizes, Jessica replied, her voice taking on that corporate distance. We need to protect the company's interests. Darius clenched his jaw. I understand, and how long do you expect this leave to last? We'll reassess in 30 days. After ending the call, Darius checked his bank accounts. The loss of income would hurt. He had savings, but house repairs and potential legal fees would drain them quickly. He was glad he had transferred money into separate accounts they couldn't easily track. His next call was to the Pentagon liaison on the secure line they had provided. Sir, I need to report a significant escalation, Darius began, his military training evident in the precision. He walked through the timeline, the power cut, the masked officers, the property destruction, the lack of any warrant. The liaison's breathing changed when Darius described how Kai had been forced to flee their home in the middle of the night. "My God," the liaison murmured. "Do you have documentation?" "Complete audio of the raid, photographs of the damage, neighbor statements, all time-stamped and backed up," Darius confirmed. "I'm sending it now through the encrypted channel." "This goes beyond harassment, Mr. Cole. This is a coordinated assault on a civilian by law enforcement. I'm escalating this immediately." While Darius documented and reported the raid, Lieutenant Harlan was busy inventing his own story at the station. He gathered his most trusted officers in the conference room with the doors closed. "Listen up," Harlan growled. "Cole has gone off the deep end, making wild accusations, threatening officers, showing clear signs of instability." The officers exchanged glances as Harlan continued. "We have reports that he's been acting erratically at his son's school, paranoid behavior, anti-police statements, the works. If anyone asks, that's what you've observed too." A younger officer shifted uncomfortably. "But sir, the Pentagon complaint is obviously the desperate action of someone with a grudge against law enforcement," Harlan interrupted. "We're protecting our own. Cole is dangerous. He's trying to tear this department apart. Remember that." By afternoon, Darius was already seeing Harlan's smear campaign take effect. The school principal called expressing concern about Kai's attendance. Local news ran a piece about rising tensions between police and an increasingly hostile resident. Darius drove to the courthouse to file for an emergency restraining order against the police department. The clerk's eyes widened when she saw his name on the paperwork. Our system isn't working right now," she stammered. "Maybe try again tomorrow." "The computer seems to be working fine," Darius observed calmly, noting her discomfort. "I'll wait." She disappeared into a back office and returned with a supervisor who glanced at Darius and said, "We can't process this today. Technical issues." Darius recorded the entire interaction on his phone and added it to his growing evidence file. They were circling the wagons exactly as he expected, but they had underestimated his patience, his training, and his determination to protect his son. That evening, as he parked outside Nora's house, Darius sat for a moment in the car, watching through the window. Kai sat at Nora's kitchen table, laughing genuinely while she taught him to make paper airplanes. The sight squeezed Darius's chest. His son's resilience amazed him. The raid had cost him his job. The smear campaign was trying to ruin his reputation. They had destroyed his home, threatened his family, and tried to paint him as unstable for daring to stand up to them. But watching Kai smile, Darius felt a strange clarity. They had taken almost everything, which meant he had nothing left to lose. No career left to protect. No reputation left to maintain. No system left to work within. They had pushed him to the edge, thinking he would break. Instead, they had freed him to fight with everything he had. The next morning, Darius knelt in front of Kai at Nora's door, straightening the straps of the boy's backpack. Morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet suburban street. "Remember what I told you about being brave?" Darius asked quietly. Kai nodded seriously. "That sometimes being brave means letting other people help keep you safe." "That's right." Darius hugged his son tightly. "You're going to stay with Aunt Nora for a while longer, just until I can fix some things." "You won't be long, will you?" Kai's voice sounded small against Darius's shoulder. "I promise, buddy, and you know I always keep my promises, right?" After watching Kai disappear safely inside with Nora, Darius got into his car. Instead of returning to his ransacked house, he drove downtown to a modern co-working space he had discovered through military contacts. The place offered private offices with enhanced security and strict confidentiality, perfect for what he needed. The receptionist handed him an access card to a corner office on the 4th floor. Darius set up his laptop, spread his files across the large desk, and opened the secure cloud where he had backed up all his documentation. Years of intelligence work had taught him the importance of meticulous records. "Time to organize everything," he murmured, opening a new document. He began with Division 9's organizational structure, building a clear hierarchy from Lieutenant Harlan down through the ranks. Each name came with dates, incident reports, and behavioral patterns. He noted how certain officers always seemed to appear in cases involving harassment or intimidation of civilians who filed complaints. Like a terrorist cell, Darius observed sadly, recalling similar analyses he had conducted overseas. Same tactics, different uniform. The harassment timeline came next. He laid out every incident chronologically, beginning with the first confrontation in the park. Each entry included officer names, badge numbers, witness statements, and supporting evidence. The pattern was unmistakable. A systematic escalation designed to destabilize him. Around midday, Darius paused for coffee in the break room. His military training showed as he watched the street through floor-to-ceiling windows. No patrol cars in sight, but he noticed an unmarked sedan that had been parked too long. He photographed the license plate through the tinted glass. Back at his desk, he added a section on surveillance tactics. He detailed the constant drive-bys, the unmarked vehicles, and the coordinated efforts to track his movements. His intelligence background helped him recognize the professional techniques being misused for harassment. False reports, school interviews, anonymous tips. He walked through the classic intimidation playbook. The raid section required special attention. Darius included floor plans of his house, marked with entry points and officer positions. He attached photos of the destruction, timestamps from his security system, and audio recordings of the officers' threats. The complete absence of proper warrant documentation was highlighted in red. By mid-afternoon, he reached the personal impact section. He documented his termination, including the transcript of the HR call and his previously excellent performance evaluations. Financial damage was calculated precisely: lost wages, property destruction, legal fees. He added the school's sudden concern about Kai and the courthouse's suspicious technical difficulties. Connect the dots, he reminded himself. Show the pattern. The final section covered systemic abuse of power. Darius compared similar cases from recent years, showing how Division 9 repeatedly targeted civilians who challenged police misconduct. He included statistics on complaint dismissals, suspiciously lost evidence, and witness intimidation. These aren't just corrupt cops, he wrote. They're an organized operation using police authority to silence anyone who speaks out. As evening fell, Darius reviewed the complete dossier. It looked like a military intelligence assessment, clear, detailed, and devastating. Every claim was supported by evidence, every connection backed by data. This was no longer just his story. It was a comprehensive exposure of systemic corruption. He created secure copies on encrypted drives, then began the careful process of distribution. The Department of Justice received it first, followed by his Pentagon contacts. He sent versions to the State Attorney General's office and the governor's legal team. The final copy went to a federal civil rights task force he had learned about through General Crow, the people who investigated pattern or practice violations by law enforcement. With each file sent, Darius felt a measure of relief. They had tried to bury him in fear and isolation, but they had forgotten his training. They had cornered him, expecting him to collapse. Instead, they had left him with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. As darkness settled outside the office windows, Darius leaned back and watched the final upload complete. The evidence was out there now, spreading through channels they could neither control nor intimidate. Let them try to discredit him now. The truth would speak for itself. He thought of Kai, probably doing homework at Nora's kitchen table right now. "Almost finished, buddy," he whispered. "Just hold on a little longer." Early the next morning, Darius sat at Nora's kitchen table with his laptop open and notes precisely arranged in front of him. His military watch showed the time for the scheduled call with the Department of Justice and Pentagon liaison. The house was quiet. Nora had taken Kai to school early, understanding that Darius needed privacy for this critical conversation. His coffee had gone cold, untouched, while he reviewed key points one final time. Exactly on schedule, his secure line rang. Darius answered with a steady voice. Darius Cole speaking. "Mr. Cole, this is Special Agent Claire Davidson from the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division," a crisp female voice replied. "I'm joined by Colonel Matthew from the Pentagon Liaison Office. We've reviewed your dossier and have some specific questions. If you're ready." "Yes, ma'am. I have all supporting documentation available." "Let's start with Division 9, Davidson said. "You've identified Lieutenant Harlan as the commanding officer. Can you explain how this unit operates within the department?" Darius leaned forward and pulled a file closer. Division 9 functions as what Harlan calls his Special Operations Unit. In theory, they handle sensitive investigations. In reality, they're his enforcement arm for dealing with civilian complaints and internal threats. How? Asked Colonel Matthews. They use coordinated harassment tactics, surveillance, false calls, anonymous complaints. When those don't work, they escalate to direct intimidation, like the raid on my home. Darius's voice remained measured despite the memory. I've documented at least 7 similar patterns against other complainants in recent years. Davidson's tone hardened when she addressed the raid. You mentioned no warrant was presented. Can you walk us through that? They breached my door at approximately late evening, Darius answered, displaying his detailed timeline. Multiple officers in tactical gear with faces covered shouted police search warrant, but never produced any document. I have audio recordings of their entry and subsequent property destruction, as well as Lieutenant Harlan's direct involvement. He played a clip from his phone. During the raid, officers could be heard yelling that the lieutenant wants this handled completely, nothing left to find. That's his voice in the background, Darius noted. I served 15 years in military intelligence. I know how to verify audio signatures. The investigators asked further questions about specific incidents, dates, and personnel involved. Darius answered each with precision, citing his documentation and offering to provide original files. His military training showed in his organized responses and attention to detail. Mr. Cole, Davidson said after nearly an hour, we're seeing some troubling correlations between your timeline and internal department records we've accessed. The pattern matches what you've described, systematic intimidation of civilians who file complaints. Colonel Matthews added, several of these tactics mirror counterintelligence operations. That's especially concerning when used against American citizens. What happens now? Darius asked. We need you to keep a low profile for the next few days, Davidson replied. We're moving on this, but we need to secure evidence before they can destroy more records. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. My son is staying with family, and I've secured all documentation in safe locations. Good. We'll be serving federal subpoenas on the station today. They'll be required to turn over body camera footage, dispatch logs, and all Division 9 communications. We'll update you on next steps soon. When the call ended, Darius leaned back in his chair and exhaled deeply. For the first time in weeks, he felt the situation shifting. Across the city at the police station, Lieutenant Harlan's morning deteriorated rapidly. Federal agents had arrived with subpoenas, demanding immediate access to records he had protected for years. His face hardened as he read the list of documents. Wipe everything in the Division 9 folders, he ordered a trusted officer. Wipe the backup drives, too. Nothing leaves this building. Sir, the officer hesitated. They're saying this is evidence tampering. Just do it, Harlan snapped, unaware that federal technicians had already created overnight backups of most systems. That afternoon, Darius decided to check his house. He drove carefully, watching for tails, but the usual patrols were conspicuously absent. The street was quiet when he parked. Inside, the destruction still hit hard. Broken furniture lay scattered. Walls showed holes from the search for hidden compartments. His home office remained ransacked. Family photos were shattered in their frames. Darius moved methodically through each room, packing essential items into a duffel bag. Clothes, documents, medications. He gathered Kai's favorite books and his worn stuffed tiger. The boy would want them. Looking around one last time, Darius felt a mixture of anger and determination. They had violated his home, trying to break his spirit. Instead, they had only demonstrated how far they were willing to fall to hide their corruption. As evening approached, Darius drove to Nora's. He would not risk sleeping in his destroyed house that night, not with Harlan desperate. His son's safety came first. Together, they would wait for justice finally to catch up with those who had abused their power for so long. Darius woke with a start on Nora's couch in the pre-dawn hours, military instincts responding to the distant thump of helicopter blades. The sound grew closer, accompanied by the familiar wail of multiple sirens echoing through the darkness. He sat up and reached for his phone as it began buzzing with incoming alerts. The screen lit his face in the dim living room as he read the first message. Breaking. FBI conducting massive raid on Metropolitan Police Headquarters. More notifications followed. Darius opened a local news live stream and lowered the volume so he wouldn't wake Kai at the end of the hall. Aerial footage showed federal vehicles surrounding the station, emergency lights painting the street red and blue. Agents in dark suits moved with precision, securing entrances and exits. Federal authorities have launched a coordinated operation against alleged corruption within the department. The reporter's voice came through the helicopter feed. Sources indicate multiple officers are being taken into custody. Darius watched intently, breathing steady but heart racing. All of his documentation, every carefully logged incident, every recorded interaction had led to this moment. The camera zoomed as agents led Lieutenant Harlan handcuffed through the main doors. The lieutenant's usual imposing presence had deflated. His face was twisted with rage as they guided him toward a waiting vehicle. Lieutenant Vance Harlan is being charged with multiple counts of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and civil rights violations, the reporter continued. This follows a month-long investigation into systematic abuse of power within the department. More officers appeared in custody. Darius recognized Pike's solid build and Quinn's distinctive stiff walk as they were escorted separately. The ticker scrolled details of the charges: falsifying police records, witness intimidation, and illegal searches. Each charge corresponded to incidents Darius had meticulously documented. His phone buzzed with a text from Nora. "Are you seeing this?" She had woken and was watching from her bedroom. "Yes," he replied. "Let Kai sleep. We'll explain everything at breakfast." The live feed showed several officers walking out voluntarily carrying boxes of files, speaking with federal agents. Darius realized these were the good cops, the ones who had stayed silent out of fear, but were now ready to help expose the corruption. They handed over documents and USB drives, adding to the evidence against Harlan's corrupt network. Darius rose and walked to Nora's kitchen window. The helicopters were already visible, their searchlights sweeping the neighborhood as news crews competed for the best aerial shots. He poured himself a glass of water, hands perfectly steady despite the adrenaline running through him. This was not victory. Not exactly. Victory would have been never having to fear for his son's safety, never seeing his home invaded, never losing his job. But it was justice, methodically delivered through the proper channels. Every photo he had taken, every audio clip he had recorded, every incident he had logged with military precision had helped build an airtight case. His phone rang. The caller ID showed a secure Department of Justice line. "Mr. Cole," Special Agent Davidson's voice came through clearly despite the early hour. "Sorry for the early call, but I wanted you to hear this directly from me." "I appreciate that, ma'am. I'm watching the news." "We've taken 23 officers into custody so far, including Harlan and the key members of Division 9. The evidence you provided was instrumental in obtaining our warrants and identifying key personnel." Darius nodded silently, thinking of all the nights spent organizing files, cross-referencing incidents, building the case piece by piece. "We'll need you to testify," Davidson continued, "both for the criminal cases and the broader civil rights investigation. Given your military background and documentation practices, you're an ideal witness." "I'll do whatever is necessary," Darius answered. "One more thing," she added. "We've arranged federal protection for you and your son. We don't anticipate retaliation. Most of the bad actors are in custody, but it's standard procedure in cases like this." Through the window, Darius watched the sky begin to lighten. Soon Kai would wake and they would talk about how standing up to bullies sometimes takes time, but justice eventually arrives. "Thank you," he told Davidson. "Will I be able to go home soon?" "Our teams finished processing it as a crime scene yesterday. Once our protective detail is in place today, you can return. We'll also help coordinate with your employer regarding reinstatement." Darius heard Kai's bedroom door open and close softly. The boy was up earlier than usual, probably woken by the helicopter noise. "I have to go, ma'am. My son is awake." "Of course. We'll be in touch later with details on the protection plans and next steps." Darius hung up just as Kai entered the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. The boy looked at the helicopter visible through the window, then at his father's face. "Dad, what's going on?" Darius knelt to his son's level and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Remember, I told you that telling the truth and standing up to bullies was important even when it was hard." Kai nodded seriously. "Well, this morning a lot of bullies are learning that lesson, and soon we'll be able to go home." A week later, Darius adjusted his tie as he climbed the steps of City Hall, morning sun warming his face. The city still buzzed with the aftermath of the federal raids. News vans lined the street, satellite dishes rising toward the sky like metal trees. Inside, marble hallways echoed with his footsteps as a young aide led him to the main conference room. The space was already packed with journalists, community leaders, and suited officials. Camera flashes went off as he entered. Mayor Angela Smith stood at the podium, her usual polished appearance slightly worn by the recent scrutiny. "Mr. Cole, please join us." She indicated a chair near the front. Special Agent Davidson sat nearby, offering a small nod of recognition. Darius took his seat, surveying the room with the attention developed over years of military service. He noted several new faces among the senior police leadership, replacements for those now facing charges. Their shoulders were straight, badges gleaming, but their eyes reflected uncertainty about the changes ahead. Mayor Smith cleared her throat. The microphone carried her voice clearly through the crowded room. "We are here today to address the serious injustices committed by those who swore to protect and serve." She turned to look directly at Darius. "Mr. Cole, on behalf of this city, I offer our deepest apologies for what you and your son, Kai, endured." The mayor's words were strong, but Darius thought of Kai's face during the nighttime raid, of his son's trembling hands as they fled through dark yards. Some things could not be undone by words alone. "The corruption exposed through Mr. Cole's diligence and courage has forced us to confront serious failures in our system," Smith continued. "Today we announce comprehensive reforms to ensure this never happens again." Special Agent Davidson stepped forward, her FBI badge reflecting the light. "Division 9, the unit responsible for much of this misconduct, is permanently dissolved. All of its former members are under investigation." She paused, looking at the media present. "Additionally, we are implementing mandatory external oversight of all police operations." The newly appointed police chief, following his predecessor's resignation, outlined specific changes. Every officer would wear body cameras that could not be deactivated. Recordings would be randomly audited by independent reviewers. Community review boards would have the authority to investigate complaints and recommend action. Darius listened carefully, noting how these changes aligned with the recommendations in his report. Each reform addressed specific patterns he had documented: the missing recordings, the ignored complaints, the intimidation tactics. Mayor Smith spoke again, her tone shifting from apology to opportunity. "Mr. Cole, your unique background, military intelligence, crisis management, and now direct experience with police misconduct, makes you invaluable to our reform efforts." She indicated a folder on the table. "We would like to offer you a position as lead consultant for our new officer training program." Darius opened the folder and reviewed the details. The role would allow him to shape how officers learn to interact with the public, recognize bias, and maintain accountability. The salary was substantial, and he would have the authority to implement real changes. "Your experience will help us rebuild trust," the police chief added. "Show our officers a better path forward." Darius thought of Kai and of other children who might face similar situations. "I accept," he said firmly into the microphone, "but I'll need full autonomy to design the program as I see fit." "Agreed," Mayor Smith nodded. "We've learned the cost of maintaining the status quo." The meeting continued with details about his house. The city had approved an emergency settlement covering all repairs plus additional compensation. Workers had already replaced the broken doors, repaired the walls, and restored order to the rooms. As cameras flashed and officials shook hands, Darius felt a complex mix of emotions. The reforms were significant, but they had come at a high personal cost. He thought of his military training, how sometimes the hardest victories leave the deepest scars. After the meeting, he drove home slowly, still adjusting to the unmarked federal vehicle that now followed for protection. Seeing his restored house brought a deep sense of relief. The front door was new, solid oak instead of the old hollow core with reinforced frames and better locks. Inside, fresh paint covered the marks of violence, though he could still see where each blow had landed. Darius checked his watch. School would end soon. He would pick up Kai and bring him home, truly home, for the first time since the raid. The boy had been brave through all of it, stronger than any child should have to be. He walked through every room, checking windows and cameras out of habit. The security system was new, top of the line, with a direct connection to federal response teams. The kitchen was restocked. Kai's favorite cereal stood lined up in the pantry. Later, as the sun set, Darius and Kai sat again at their own table. The boy's feet swung under the chair while he ate a plate of macaroni and cheese he had requested for his first meal back. The familiar creaks of the house settling no longer startled him. "Dad?" Kai looked up from his food. "Are we really staying?" Darius reached across the table and squeezed his son's hand. "Yes, we're home for good. No one is ever going to break down this door again." An autumn breeze whispered through the trees of Riverside Park, carrying the sweet scent of fallen leaves. Darius Cole sat on the same bench where everything had begun months earlier, but the weight on his shoulders now felt different, lighter. Morning sun bathed everything in warm, golden tones, a sharp contrast to the dark memories of that first confrontation. Kai bounced beside him, energy barely contained. "Can I go on the bars, Dad?" Darius smiled, noticing how his son's voice had lost that edge of worry it had carried for so long. "Go ahead, buddy. I'm right here watching." As Kai ran toward this playground, Darius observed the changes in the park. New security cameras had been discreetly installed as part of the city's reform surveillance program. Patrol patterns had changed too, less intimidating, more community-focused. A woman in a Navy uniform approached. Her badge read Community Safety Officer Torres. She walked with purpose but relaxed, nothing like the aggressive posture Pike had adopted that first day. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," she said, maintaining a respectful distance. "Just checking in. How are you and your son doing today?" Darius nodded, appreciating her stance of keeping Kai in view without making him a target. "We're well, Officer Torres. Thank you." "Glad to hear it. Please don't hesitate to wave if you need anything." She smiled and continued her rounds, giving them space while remaining visible from her new position near the park entrance. "Dad, look at this," Kai called from the bars, face radiant with concentration as he swung from rung to rung. Darius watched his son's progress, remembering how Kai had frozen in fear when Quinn barked months earlier. Now the boy moved with confidence, not flinching when other officers walked past. The transformation brought Darius a warmth that had nothing to do with the morning sun. A portable radio on a nearby picnic table quietly broadcast the morning news. Federal prosecutors have announced trial dates for former Lieutenant Harlan and Officers Pike and Quinn. Charges include civil rights violations, conspiracy, and abuse of power. Meanwhile, police reforms spurred by the Cole case continue to expand. Darius tuned out the news and focused on Kai's laughter as he played with other children. Parents who once would have steered their kids away now smiled and waved, having seen his story on the news. Some even approached him in the grocery store or at the gas station to share their own experiences of police harassment. A boy about Kai's age ran past wearing a Youth Police Academy t-shirt. Instead of tensing, Darius felt hopeful. The new training program he was developing would help ensure children's dreams of becoming officers were not corrupted by people like Harlan. The morning passed peacefully. Kai made friends with two other boys. They raced between playground structures. Darius watched them play, noting how different officers rotated through the park. All professional, each clearly displaying badge number and name tag according to the new rules. "Did you see me, Dad?" Kai shouted, hanging upside down from the bars. "I sure did. Great job, buddy," Darius answered, pride clear in his voice. "Show me again." As Kai demonstrated his improved skills, Darius reflected on how far they had come. The nightmares had almost completely stopped. Kai no longer startled at sudden noises. The therapy sessions covered by the city's settlement had helped them both process the trauma of the raid. A family walked past carrying a newspaper with a visible headline, "Former Division 9 officers face federal charges." Beneath it was a photo of Harlan being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of disbelief. The image brought Darius no joy, only a quiet satisfaction that justice was being served. The community safety officer passed again, this time helping a small, lost child find his mother. The difference in approach was obvious. No hands near weapons, no aggressive posture, just genuine service to the community. "Hey, Dad," Kai called, running back to the bench. "Can we get ice cream?" Darius checked his watch. They had been at the park more than an hour, longer than they had managed to stay that first day. "Sure, same place as last time." Kai nodded enthusiastically, taking Darius's hand as they stood to leave. The gesture, once born of fear, now came from simple affection. They walked together through the park, passing the spot where Pike had tried to force Darius against the bench. The sting of that memory had faded, replaced by the certainty that such abuse of power now carried real consequences. The radio continued its quiet broadcast as they passed. The cold case has become required study material in police departments across the state, and similar programs are being considered nationally. Darius gently squeezed Kai's hand as they walked toward the park exit, both of them smiling. Morning sun lit Kai's face as he looked up at his father. His expression reflected confidence and security. Behind them, the careers of corrupt officers lay in ruins, turned into a powerful warning for anyone considering following their path. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the meantime, I've selected 2 stories I think you'll enjoy. Have a good day.